Hello. I'm excited to be here today. This is very exciting that we're talking about health, and climate is very much related to health and use of fossil fuels. I'm currently also the Vice President of Business Development at OpConnect, an electric vehicle fueling company. And what I want to talk about here today is that we have invented all of the technology we need. Ooh, this is getting away from me here. We've invented all of the technology that we need to move to a cleaner, all renewable electric infrastructure. Our modern day Edisons have done their job, and we can, with what we have today, actually do it. Now, what we usually talk about, or what is often talked about, is climate change. And when we think about renewable energy, we think about the fact that we need to implement renewable energy and put solar panels on a roof because of climate change, because of this horrible thing happening, which it is terrible, and it's something that is very concerning. But the truth is, we should actually move to this 21st century technology, clean technology, even if there were no climate change. And actually, we would be moving in that direction, or we will be, even without climate change. And that is the exciting news that I want to share with you today, is that this technology is actually better, it's cleaner, it's safer, and it's a technology that we should move to even without climate change. So if we're going to move to an all-electric renewable energy infrastructure, we have to think about not just our electricity, but we have to also think about our heating and cooling, as well as our transportation and our industry. Because we often think, and politicians in the news also talk about how, okay, we're moving to clean renewable energy, and we're going to put up solar plants and wind plants, but there's actually more to it. It's the entire energy infrastructure. So if we're looking at our electricity, we are looking at solar, wind, or hydro, maybe energy storage technologies. You can also do hydrogen as well. But if we look at our transportation, we can look at hydrogen, as well as hydrogen ships, hydrogen airplanes, electric vehicles. And there's also heating and cooling. And that we would think about moving away from fossil fuel-based heating and move towards heat pump. And that's heating of also the air and the water as well. So we'd move to solar hot water heaters and using heat pumps. And in industry also, we use many fossil fuels for industrial processes and heating. The digital transformation has allowed this renewable future, has helped facilitate this renewable future. The renewable future will have many different distributed resources. We'll have solar and wind plants and solar panels on a roof and energy storage, big, huge energy storage, but also storage around our houses and neighborhoods. And the ability to manage that is facilitated by our digital technology. We also have the Internet of Things, which is our car can be something that's smart, and we can actually, as individual people or the utility, have access to our cars so that at night we can, for instance, charge our cars at night when the wind is blowing and energy is super cheap and nobody is using it, electricity at that time. And so when you have the Internet of Things, you can control these. You can also use our hot water heaters, the water in our hot water tanks, to put energy as well. You can heat our tanks at night. And that is where the Internet of Things is also useful in this energy transformation. Our personal devices as well, where we can manage our own home energy use. And that is something that has given this future, facilitated this future. We do have resources. One of the things that people have said to debunk a renewable energy future is that we don't have the resources to to do this. We just couldn't do it with the technology we have in the research. But we actually have, researchers have found, we have 150 terawatts of solar PV alone. That's just solar PV in rural, not on our rooftops, nothing. That's 18 times the energy and the capacity that we need to power all of our energy needs by the year 2050. And we have 2.5 times the wind capacity on offshore and onshore to power all of our needs. That's just with that. There's other technologies as well, geothermal or hydro and wave that we can also access. So and that is actually capacity that is on developable land, not sensitive land that will harm sensitive and pristine landscapes or sensitive animals. This is in ecosystems. This is actually, folks who've done research have looked at this for undevelopable land, how much actual land that's been overgrazed already or that is not sensitive. Now, if you want to think of that, you'd see that we would need about 0.2% of the U.S. land that's without spacing. Only 0.2% of U.S. land to do this. And if you do consider spacing, like the spacing between the wind turbines, that's about 1.4% of U.S. land. It's not that much land that we would need for all of our energy needs. Once we build all of our solar plants, all of our wind farms. If you've gone out into the country and you have seen solar plants and wind farms, it seems like a lot, like it's taking a lot of land. But if you actually do all the calculations, look at what we would need, we actually don't need that much. And if you think about for our energy need compared to what we're using for our food needs, you need about 0.3 acres of energy per person, land per person, and that's compared to you need about 1 acre per person to feed us. The researchers have looked at how we would do this, and we would have a mix. We'd have a mix of solar, wind, rooftop solar, offshore wind, wave technology. You'd also have various energy storage technologies. Mark Jacobson from Stanford University has done this research. The Solutions Project, you can look at it online. I'm not affiliated with them. They just have a lot of really good information. They look at different states, and they have done this analysis for what each state could do in the US, as well as cities and towns. And they've done some international work as well. They've also found that it'll be 45% more efficient because running our future energy infrastructure on electricity is much more efficient than running it on fossil fuels. Fossil fuels, we need combustion, and combustion is less efficient than actually supplying the electricity to a car or for heating or what have you. Now, we need to do this quickly. I'm going to talk about how this is inevitable because it's a better disruptive technology. These are better and disruptive technologies, but we do need to do it quickly. And the reason we need to do it quickly is we have a greenhouse gas budget. That means that's the amount of greenhouse gases we can put in the air before we go over 1.5 degrees Celsius. Originally, we were talking about staying below 2 degrees Celsius. The new International Panel of Climate Control has come out and said that we need to actually stay at about 1.5 degrees Celsius. We have the amount of greenhouse gases we currently have in the air is about 2,230 gigatons of carbon dioxide. We have about 420 to 580 gigatons of carbon dioxide left to put in the air. We can't put that much more. And every day we're adding to that. We're adding to that. We're getting closer and closer to blowing this greenhouse gas budget. So we need, at this point, to start taking our fossil fuels offline about in the next 15 to 30 years. Ideally, in the next 15 years, we'd get to zero to be sure, to stay more sure to stay below 1.5 degrees Celsius. If we do it by the year 2050, then it's about a 50% chance of staying below 1.5 degrees Celsius. We will need to also do maybe forestation and some actual negative emissions, which is actually taking carbon dioxide out of the air planting trees and doing some agricultural process can help that. And then there's other technology that's being developed, but it's not guaranteed. This is not relying on future technology to take carbon dioxide out of the air is not the thing we need to do. It's a lot cheaper, a lot better to just start by 4 to 6% per year taking fossil fuels offline and removing emissions as well. So we do have the means to do this. It's going to be about 210,000 megawatts per year to get that we need to of renewable energy that we need to bring online. And researchers have done the calculations, and it's looked that it'll be about 3 to 4% of our gross domestic product. It may seem like a lot, but our 4% is the gross domestic product. 4% of our gross domestic product is currently what we spend on our military. So it's a lot of money, but it's not an outrageous. People have said, oh, this is a World War II effort. This is something that's going to be huge. How are we going to do this? But really, it's an investment of 4% of our GDP. It's not a World War II effort. A World War II effort, we used 40% of our gross domestic product. And we transformed our industrial infrastructure in 5 years to beat fascism, right? We didn't do 4%. 4% is doable, and the money that we're currently using for our fossil fuel infrastructure can be taken offline and then allocated to our new 21st century clean technology infrastructure. China, if we also want to look at some of our folks around the world, China is planning to implement about 1 million megawatts of greenhouse gas-free energy by the year 2030. That's the total US electricity capacity, okay? And that's about 3% of China's gross domestic product. So if they can do it, of course we can do it. I mean, this is something within our means. So the good news is that renewable energy is winning, it's taking hold, and the prices are dropping. It's actually less expensive to build utility scale solar right now than new natural gas or coal or nuclear energy. It's unsubsidized. It's actually cheaper to put wind or solar plants in than it is to put new natural gas. A few natural gas can kind of compete, but as time is going on, solar and wind prices are dropping and dropping and dropping. So renewable energy deployment is happening, and Xcel Energy, which is one of the biggest utilities in the country, they have said that they would be 100% carbon-free by the year 2050. They're doing that because their customers want it, but also because it's cheaper, like I just showed you. It just makes sense to do it. Texas right now has 15.7, about 16% of their electricity was generated in Texas in 2017 by wind. So it's happening. Energy storage is also happening. You see solar and storage or wind and storage projects happening. Tesla, there's a Tesla battery that was installed in Australia, and that happened in record time in 100 days, and it saved them money. Xcel Energy, which is another, again, the utility, has replaced 2 Colorado coal plants with renewable plus storage systems. And then in the fall of 2018, California had the approval, Portland General Electric utility in California, to replace 3 California gas plants with storage. And Tesla is also in other storage units are involved in microgrids in different islands, like Tesla is in the island of Samoa. Now there's a big but, and I'm going to drink something because my throat's a bit dry. There's a big but. It's natural gas. We are using, while we are also bringing solar and wind and renewables online, we are using a lot of natural gas. We are using it not just for our power plants, but for heating water, for space heating, and for industrial uses. The amount of natural gas we use for our heating and our industrial uses is actually more than what we use for electricity generation. And we use 2 times the natural gas that we used in coal. So we think a lot about coal. There's been a Beyond Coal campaigns, and we think of dirty coal polluting our air, which they do because you see it in the air. It's quite dirty. But natural gas is a problem too. Natural gas produces about half the carbon dioxide of coal, but because we use 2 times as much natural gas as coal, we produce as much carbon dioxide right now from natural gas as we do from coal. And then there's leaking, methane leaking. And the distribution systems for natural gas leak. The thought is about by 2.3% right now. There's lower numbers and higher numbers, but that's kind of the, a good number to kind of think of. With leaking, our natural gas use is actually more problematic and causing more greenhouse gases than our coal infrastructure right now. So we have to think of we have to bring our natural gas offline as well. The greenhouse, if we think, we can look a little bit of what we can do to tackle our natural gas use. And one of those things we can think of is where the greenhouse gases come from. Our commercial and residential, I think I can point over here, greenhouse gas emissions is about 11%. Now that's not including the electricity we use in our commercial and residential sector. That's our heating and our cooking and also some waste management, waste issues as well. About 78% of the greenhouse gases in our commercial and residential sector come from natural gas and heating and cooking. So what that means is about 9% of the US greenhouse gas emissions come from the residential and commercial sector with our heating and our cooking. But what that means is that we actually, we as consumers, as a general person, we can actually do something about this. We can actually do something about the greenhouse gases that are being produced from natural gas, and we can have an impact. Just like with our cars, if you see 11% of the greenhouse gases come from cars, not from transportation. Transportation is about 30%, but from cars. And we can do something about that too, because we can buy electric vehicles. And so what we can do about the heating and cooking is we can get electric heating and electric cooking. And electric heating with heat pumps, or you can, is one way we can do it in the home. So a good way for us as consumers to have an impact on greenhouse gases is to move to the all-electric home. And what that means is that you can do cooking, like induction cooking is very good. We use a lot of natural gas, and I know cooks love cooking with natural gas. My mother always cooked with natural gas and loves cooking, and I grew up cooking with natural gas as well. But to get natural gas out of our energy infrastructure, we need to get it out of our homes too. And moving to induction cooking is a really good way. I did get an induction oven myself. I do enjoy cooking with it. It heats up really fast. And the other is to get heat pumps. And heat pumps are another great way. There are now cold climate heat pumps. There's air source and ground source heat pumps. And they're a fabulous way. We can also just move to get solar panels on our roof, get home management systems, and we can get energy storage as well and move to this all-electric home. Here's a heat pump, and heat pump is basically an air conditioner. It's basically an air conditioner running forward and backward. It can run backwards. And in the winter, you're going to take actually heat that is even in cold air is outside, and you transfer it to the inside of your house. It's about 300% efficient. And they are using them in places like Maine. So it used to be something that they were used mainly in the South, but technology's improved. And you can use them as a You can do water heating, you can do air conditioning, and you can do house heating. So the next thing I want to talk about is that we have to think of renewable energy as a resource. It is cleaner, it is cheaper, it is safer, and it is a resource. It's not something that we have to do just because of climate change. We have to do it because of climate change. We have to do it fast, but it's a wonderful resource, a health resource, of course. The air pollution has caused from fossil fuels and biofuels and bioenergy and biomass burning is the second leading cause of death worldwide. It impacts our health very much, indoors and outdoors. We have air pollution indoors and outdoors from our fossil fuels. An MIT study in 2013 said that that it causes about 200,000 early deaths a year. We see heart disease and stroke and lower respiratory tract infection, lung cancers, asthma, and other illnesses that come from our fossil fuel infrastructure. Fossil fuels have an impact on the planet, and they have an impact on humans. They are poison. They poison us, and they poison the planet. They contaminate the air and the water. You have coal contaminates the air and water, and contaminates streams from coal ash, and that comes from the dust on the trains or from spills, of course. We have oil spills, natural gas, we have explosion, we have methane leaking. Nuclear energy, we have meltdowns, we have problems with storage. We have events like Fukushima or Chernobyl, which have poisoned areas. So all of these things can be removed, and we can move to a healthier future. We also have, they're also a national security resource. The former CIA chief, James Woolsey, has an interesting quote. He says, "Every time you fill up your car, you're sending a check to foreign countries to pay for their oil. Why not send money to the local electric utility or your neighborhood solar installer instead? Indeed, if we move to renewable energy and to powering our energy with electricity, that's what we're doing. We're sending money back to our local utility or to our neighborhood solar installer. It actually is a benefit. Instead of having to guard our oil interests abroad and all of the money that we send abroad to transport, to move, and to guard the oil that's sent between here and there in Europe and wherever, we can be focusing on building our energy infrastructure here. It's estimated that about $75 billion per year is spent on the U.S. national defense budget to secure our oil. It's a societal revenue resource like I was just talking about. We can, instead of spending money on the fossil fuel industry, much of which is sent abroad, we can bring it towards developing our 21st century technology and the electricity industry. The grid modernization, just grid modernization, is thought to will cost about $476 billion, but it's going to provide $2 trillion in benefit. That's what's thought, and what's been estimated. So this is a definite, again, a resource, and we can think of it that way, and we should be talking about it that way. It's also a U.S. economy resource. The rest of the world is investing right now in 21st century technology, and we should be too. Now, I bring up China not to, in a very friendly, competitive way, to say that China is investing heavily. They're actually the leaders in solar implementation and manufacturing, in wind, and in electric vehicles. China was leading the EV production, and they sold 777,000 EVs in the year 2017. The U.S. sold about 200,000. So the U.S. is not investing as heavily in this 21st century technology as China is, and if If we want to, let's say, stay in the game and continue to be a nice, strong, healthy economy, we need to be investing in 21st century technology, not in coal. You know, we have to move from 20th century and 19th century technology. It is a resource for our cities and states as well. That is something to be, that is really something for us to think about, where we've made a lot of headway. If cities and states develop their own power plants and have community solar as well, they can power their own energy, their own electricity. And that can save quite a bit of money for the city in the long run. It also helps as far as resiliency. So if the city produces its own electricity, if there is a time that that the grid is down or something happens with the central generation, the city can continue to function. And if the city has an EV network, for instance, and they have their own city fleet, and they have community solar on top of City Hall or wherever, then the city can power its vehicle fleets with electricity it produces itself. Or the vehicle fleets can be powered by the local electric utility. The other thing is electric vehicles are powered for about $1 per gallon equivalent. It's much less expensive to run electric vehicles on electricity, or cars on electricity, than it is to run it on oil. So this is a resource for our cities and towns, for sure. And they can create microgrids as well, the cities. Again, like I said, where you're resilient. And that's where you think of the resilient national security resource. And Puerto Rico was not resilient. You know, they didn't have, after a storm, everything went down, and now they're working on becoming more resilient. Hawaii is working on it too. They have plans to become, to have 100% renewable electricity infrastructure, and they are thinking about electric vehicles because they have to transport their oil to Hawaii, and it makes much more sense to make the electricity right there. But you don't have to be an island to benefit from that and from this renewable energy technology. You can do it in every city and make every city more resilient. And you can make it so that every city is its own microgrid. And even if you don't have 100% of the capacity that you would from the central generation, at least you can run some central functions. And as we know, we're becoming more and more and more reliant on electricity. When we don't have it, our phones don't work. Our internet doesn't work. It's hard to get in touch with our loved ones. It's hard to call emergency if we don't have electricity. More and more of us are using smartphones. And so it's really important as we move to the 21st century to have this resilience. As I talked about, I'll talk a little bit more detail about EV networks for cities and towns. 30% of US energy is used by transportation. And moving to electric vehicles is a really important resource for our cities, for fleets, and for people as well. It's less expensive for all of us, it's less expensive for our cities, so it will help our cities, and it also controls the pollution in our cities as well. We can also use our electric vehicles for managing our electricity. So we can actually, if we have our EVs and they're smart, we can actually charge them at times when the electricity is the cheapest and when we need to, so that we don't overload the grid, or we don't all come home and plug our cars in at once and then charge them all at once. It's better if we charge them, let's say, when there's wind energy blowing at night when it's practically cheap. And ideally, our cars would be cheap. I mean, our cars would be smart so that we could program in when we wanted our cars charged, and we could program it into a home management system, and then we could maybe pay less than $1 per gallon equivalent And cities could too. And so that would benefit everybody. And the other thing is that we wouldn't be, the electric vehicles are not, because they're not on oil, then they're not subject to the price fluctuations of the oil industry. As we know, whenever oil prices go up, it impacts our businesses because they start thinking about the shipping costs, and then it trickles down to us, and then we have to pay more money for the goods and services. And we talk about what a stress it is. If we have electric vehicles, then we are able to have a more consistent price on energy. The other thing is electricity is regulated. Electricity prices are regulated. We have regulators, and for good or bad, you know, people can get annoyed with the regulators, but the regulators are there to make sure our electric utilities, which are essentially monopolies, do not overcharge us for energy. And so they're there to make sure that the consumer is protected, that the homeowner is protected, that the business owner is protected, that we don't get charged outrageous inflated prices for electricity. So if we get our energy from this electricity, if our cities power their fleets of cars with electricity, then it is safer, it's better for all of us. So again, this is a resource. Again, as I mentioned, it's a consumer resource. But moving to renewable energy in our home is a consumer resource in more ways, because we can be and have our own microgrids in our homes, in our buildings. You know, it may be a building. I mean, especially in New York, you have many buildings, multifamily units throughout New York and throughout the world. But your building can be a microgrid. Buildings can have energy storage systems associated with them. So if the power goes out, at least some of the main functions in your building can function. And then if you have a home and you have energy storage in your home, that helps. You can also have it in a neighborhood. And the other thing is, if you have electric vehicles, if you have a garage in a multifamily unit, like an apartment building or whatever, or if you have a single family home, you can use your battery if there is the vehicle to home system. The battery on the car can actually power essential functions in your home. And it's very useful. And if you have solar panels on the roof, in a building or in the house, in your house, you can actually produce some of your own electricity. And if there's a power outage, a storm, or God forbid, you know, a terrorist attack, then again, you can act as your own mini microgrid and power essential functions in your home. If you have enough, maybe you can power almost all of the functions in your home. So the other thing is with the electric vehicle, if you do have charging at home or in a garage, if you're in an apartment and you have parking, this is extremely convenient. Right now I have an electric vehicle, and I come home, I plug my car in, or, you know, maybe I don't if I'm nice and I plug at night when the wind is blowing, and it's so convenient. I don't like going to the gas station at all anymore. I mean, you can go to fast chargers and get the car charged, but it's really wonderful to be able to plug in. And ideally, you know, eventually anywhere on the street you can access electricity. I had seen pictures in London. I haven't seen it personally, but they were putting plugs in lampposts. People were, you know, pulling up to the lamppost and just plugging their cars in. I mean, they had provided plugs there so that you can charge. So this is something you can do anyway. It's really convenient. Electric vehicles are also really, really fun. They have amazing acceleration and torque, and you can beat anybody. You know, I mean, you can just drive and nobody can catch you. And so, you know, if you want to pass that guy there and get in front of him, they don't know what's happened to them. You have so much acceleration, you just kind of look at them, and then you can get in front before they can even think twice about pulling up to not letting you in. But, you know, I mean, that's sort of the fun part. And I'm not really a car person. I mean, I wasn't like reading about cars and following cars. But when I experienced electric vehicle, I thought, wow, you know, this is the future, and this is fun. And I know so many people will have fun with this cars, especially car enthusiasts. So when we think of renewable energy, we really should be thinking about it as an amazing renewable energy resource. There's health benefits, there's revenue that we bring to our cities and our towns and to our country. We have backup storage and microgrids. It's awesome, fun, and convenient. It really is. You get energy independence. It's good for the environment. You have resilience. It's the future of technology. It is cheaper. It is safer. And it will help the climate, right? I mean, we're thinking of renewable energy because of climate change. And really, climate, I don't want to downplay it. It is probably the biggest threat to society today. Okay, climate is a huge deal. It's so important. But that's what we always talk about. And half of this country, doesn't listen when you talk about climate. Part of this country doesn't even believe climate's an issue, right? Which is another problem. But the truth is, it's a resource. It's fun. It's awesome. We should be moving there anyway. Other countries in this world are moving there. So we should too. We really should. And that's a wonderful way to think about it. And it can be fun. I repeat, for any of us, 21st century technology can be fun. It is sometimes scary. Autonomous driving, maybe it's a neat idea to have a car come to your house and pick you up and nobody's there and it's pretty cool. But, I'm a kid born in the 20th century and moving to new technology is always hard. At the last turn of the century, people were afraid of electricity. They were not sure about what this new technology would bring to them. And indeed, none of us can be sure. We have a lot of new technologies coming online. But renewable energy is coming, and we have to think of it for all of the positive things and the resources it provides. So now we have to think, how do we make it happen? Now we have to make it happen faster and sooner because of climate change. I think it's happening anyway, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but we do need to have it happen quickly, ideally in the next 15 years, which, wow, but definitely by the year 2050. We should be at pretty close to zero. We should be at zero emissions by that time. So country and state and city and town initiatives, community initiatives, are a big way and to make this transformation happening. In the United States, we are a civilized society and we're governed by the rule of law. And using the rule of law to better society is something we should do. Passing laws does not make us socialist. We pass laws all the time. And I hear all the time that, well, we don't want to pass a law to make one technology win over another. And we're so focused on having the market decide on everything today. I don't know if but as a society, we think in that way. But because I don't know if it's as though we're afraid of being called socialists or what it is. We think the market should just govern everything. But the market has not decided on really important decisions for us in the history of this country. In 1950, we invested in highway infrastructure. In 1960, we allocated resources to go to the moon. No, we did not have the market decide that we wanted to go to the moon. We decided that we wanted to go to the moon because we wanted to invest in new technology, expand our horizons as humans, as a society. In World War II, we decided to fight terrorism and, fascism. And we made a decision. The market didn't decide Hitler's in Germany and we need to go fight him, right? We decided this guy's really dangerous. We need to go and get rid of him from Europe because this is terrible. Civil rights laws were also decided turned into laws. We expanded the right to vote, and we even passed immigration laws. So we pass laws, and we can pass laws and have legal initiatives in our society to better society. And climate change is a threat. There's no reason not to pass laws to remove to renewable energy and take fossil fuels offline if climate change is a threat to our society. We do other things. We have CAFE standards where we have fuel economy standards where we decide how many miles per gallon our cars should get. The Department of Energy invests in future technologies, which we need to do as a country because we can't stay in the 20th century. The rest of the world is moving to the 21st century. So we do things like we invested in Tesla. We put, and Tesla actually repaid the $465 million loan that the Department of Energy gave to them. China has also invested in their electric vehicle charging company, which is BYD. They have given them about $590 million in grants and subsidies. And I'm not sure if they've given more even now. But what do you see here? With Tesla, there is all of this doubt about Tesla. Every day there's an article about how Tesla's going to fail, but they released the Model 3, and in August of 2018, this last summer, the Model 3 was the best-selling car in August. And actually it's been either one of the top or one of the best-selling cars for the second half of 2018. So it's really been a successful product, and China, Sweden, Norway, Netherlands, India, France, and some other countries are planning to ban internal combustion engine cars in the future because they don't have oil. We have oil, and we have this auto industry and this oil industry, so we're not banning it as quickly. It doesn't serve other countries that have to fill up for $6 per gallon to have fossil fueled cars. For them, it makes sense to move to electric vehicles, and we have the technology now. So they're doing it. If the rest of the world is doing it, who are we going to sell our gas-powered, oil-powered cars to in the world? Who is Ford or General Motors going to do it? We already, Detroit's already suffering as it is. We need our auto industry to be strong because we need people to work. We need our industries. So it's important that we invest in future technology. We have legislative initiatives that have been important for renewable energy. We have the Renewable Portfolio Standards, and that is laws that that guide or tell utilities how much renewable energy or what percentage of renewable energy they need to have as part of their generation. And different states have different amounts, but it's been very successful. About half of the United States renewable energy capacity has been grown from laws that have been passed for renewable portfolio standards. And then we've also had tax credits. There's bipartisan budget acts that have been passed. There was the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2018, and that was for tax credits for renewable electricity. We also have tax credits for electric vehicles. And one of the reasons it's bipartisan is that wind is very productive in Republican-led states. Kansas, Oklahoma, Wyoming, Texas, all of these places have a lot of wind. And it helps farmers because when farmers don't have enough produce, they can still generate electricity. There is some value, there's quite a bit of value, and Iowa as well. And those states do want renewable energy. It's a resource for them. And that's why I think you're seeing these laws passed and these budgets passed. The 100% counties, states, and town and initiatives have also started to pop up, and they're very important. There are communities that say, we want 100% renewable energy, and there are states that are talking about it as well. And that has been very useful. In Hawaii, the governor of Hawaii passed a law, was the first state to pass a law for 100% renewable electricity by the year 2045. New Jersey has a law for 100% clean electricity in 2050. California has a law for a goal of 100% clean electricity by 2045. In New York and Washington, Governor Cuomo and Inslee are also pushing for clean electricity laws as well. And it's really powerful. We won't necessarily do it. If what we're not doing as a nation, we can start thinking of the resource and the benefit that it has for us in our towns, our cities, or our states. And that helps because that helps develop the technology, it helps develop the know-how, and we can do it that way. And also 90 cities and towns and 10 counties have made commitments to be 100% renewable energy. And they're not all democratic or left-leaning. You see a lot of cities and towns that are in red states and red city and towns. Greensburg, Kansas, Rockport, Missouri, Salt Lake City, Utah, San Diego, California, that has strong conservative right-leaning populations are moving to renewable energy as well because it's a resource. Because many of the mayors and the leaders there have said, you know, it's a resource. We can make our own electricity. It's better for us. It makes us resilient. We're going to do it. I heard the mayor in Georgetown, Texas talking, and he was talking about the wind, all of the wind energy around his town, and how it just made sense for their town to do it. And then Portland, Oregon has done it. Of course, that is a left-leaning town with Mayor Ted Wheeler, and they have have enacted a goal where they'll be 100% renewable by the year 2050. They'll have renewable electricity earlier, and then eventually all of their transportation and heating and all of their city uses will be 100%. Some of these goals are for 100% electricity, not for everything, not for all of our needs. That is one thing that we need to keep in mind when we think of, oh great, you know, Hawaii has decided to become 100% renewable state. It is wonderful, but it isn't the law for everything. But it's a great start. It's good that we're doing it, that our cities and states are doing it. There is some question about how we fund this transformation. We do need to think about that. It's hard. We need city financing. Private industry does invest in this, of course. Green banks and loan guarantees are very helpful. There are incentives. There's various financing like PACE. Utilities can help as well. I'll talk about that a little bit, but because utilities are the ones providing the fuel for this, it would be great to have our utilities be more involved in actually helping push this transformation. They're the ones who have the customers, they're in contact with us, and they can be really big, really important players. Not just give us electricity, but actually help with this transformation. So now I do go to the utility. And another way we can make this happen is with our electric utility. There was a time our electric utilities were marketing their product. In the early, in the early 20th century, in 1930, sorry, you had this little guy, Ready Kilowatt, and the utilities were trying to push electricity, trying to get homes electrified, or trying to bring electricity throughout the United States, and they used him as a marketing tool to push their product. And then eventually in 1950, you had the all-electric home, and you had Westinghouse, GE, and Whirlpool partnered with 300 utilities, I believe, to push the all-electric home. So in some sense, we're reviving the concept of the all-electric medallion home. And amazingly, Ronald Reagan was the spokesman for the all-electric home, and he would talk about how we can live better electrically, and these guys talked about how you can live electrically. They partnered with private industry, and they tried to develop the electrification of the rural communities as well. And so the utilities were players in doing it, and they could be players again. My co-author, David Freeman, was a CEO of utilities for years. He's 93 now. And he headed Tennessee Valley Authority, Sacramento Municipal Utility District, and he headed LADWP in Los Angeles as well. And he had heat pump programs in Tennessee Valley Authority. And he always pushed energy efficiency. And the all-electric home was what he talked about. And he was saying, we as utilities, or the utilities, can actually help save society. They can actually help make a cleaner future for us. And he tried to do it when he was actually running utilities. And now we wrote a book together, and that's one of the things that we really wanted to bring home, was that the folks that are supplying the fuel can actually be important players. There's a few utilities that are doing it. Two really notable ones are Green Mountain Power of Vermont and Sacramento Municipal Utility District, SMUD is their name. And they're promoting the all-electric home. Many utilities are not doing it. Now they're starting to promote electric vehicles, and they are supporting electrification, but they're not pushing the all-electric home per se. But Green Mountain Power is, and SMUD is as well. Green Mountain Power is a utility to look at because they're doing what we need in society. They're doing really cool stuff. They have folks who come in. Dave Freeman, my co-author, talks about we need green doctors. Every utility needs a green doctor. And they basically have that. I don't know if they call them green doctors. That's what Dave calls them. But we need, what they do, what Green Mountain Power does, is they bring somebody to their customer's home. They look at the house. They do an energy audit. They help them. Then they find contractors for them. They have a bunch of contractors that can actually do this work and that they know can do the work. And then, so basically they help facilitate making an all-electric, renewable, clean home is what the utility does. So they come in, they look at it, they bring the contractors, they can put solar panels on your roof, they can put heat pumps in your home, they can I think they had a Tesla Powerwall program where they were bringing Tesla Powerwall energy storage batteries in. They have some work with electric vehicles also. They even have some of their homes get off the grid because it's more beneficial for them to have some of these homes actually get off the grid. So they do all of this, and then they help you wrap all of the price of everything, all of the upgrades you've made to your home into the electric bill. And then they also finance it for you because financing is huge. I mean, to be able to do these transformations in our homes, in our own spaces, it can be hard because of financing. My parents got a heat pump when their natural gas furnace got too old and broke and they needed a new one. I said, all right, now it's time to get a heat pump. Let's do it. This is awesome. So I sent my dad, all right, I think I found a contractor, go talk to this guy. And there's this type of cold climate, and we're in Portland, Oregon. It's not that cold there, so we didn't need the cold climate heat pump. We didn't need the one that you would need for Maine or something, right? But I said, go get it. And I said, I think this one and this heat pump are good. I've read about them. I wrote a book about it. So my dad goes back and he's like, how am I going to pay for this? So it was about $12,000, right? And their air conditioner broke also. So they thought, okay, we can get this thing, and it can do our air conditioning and our heating, and it'll save us price in utility bills because it's 300% efficient as well, these things, as they transfer heat from either the ground or the air. But he said, I can't buy it right now. So then he started looking, and eventually he found a heat pump, a cold climate heat pump that had 0% financing and over 4 years or something like this, and that's the one he got. In the end, the heat pump he got was the one that had financing. So financing is really important. What Green Mountain Power does is Green Mountain Power provides the financing. It wraps it into your electricity bill, and now you've upgraded your home. It's energy efficient, so it uses less energy, which is good for the utility, because now they don't have to build more plants because your home is using less electricity. Maybe you even have solar panels on your roof, and they're financing it, and they're engaged with their customer. They're great, and utilities want to have nice relationships with their customers. You know, we may not realize it, but they spend an enormous amount of time thinking about us, their customer. They really want us to like them. Maybe we don't often, but they really, you know, for them it's really bad. Reliability is important, and then having their customer like them and be happy and is important to them as well. So Green Mountain Power has a lot. They're really good to look at. SMUD is also doing it as well. That's another utility to look at. If anybody is interested in knowing more about that, those are the folks I would go to think about the model utilities, you know, how it can be. So of course, advocacy is important, right? We have to advocate as well. To make this transformation happen, advocacy has been essential. You know, we have the Dakota Access Pipeline, where people have gone and protested, and that's been important. It's gotten a lot of press. We have the People's Climate March. We have various campaigns and non-government organizations. 350.org has pushed to tell us about how many parts per million, you know, carbon we should have in the air. That's 350 parts per million is what we should have. We've gone over that now. Moving beyond coal, there was a Beyond Coal campaign that brought a lot of attention to the fact that we need to move beyond coal, that there are other technologies there, and it's been very successful. And then the Keep It in the Ground campaign is another campaign. I bring this up because you have Bernie Sanders here and Jeff Merkley here, the senators from Vermont and Oregon, and Bill McKibben here, I don't know where he is, right there, you know, who was part of this campaign. The campaign got the attention of our lawmakers. That's what we want. And eventually our lawmakers either pass laws if they can, or they push for this. And it's important. So our work, our grassroots work is important because it is heard. It might feel exhausting and tiring, or that nobody hears us, but they do. You know, it happens. You can see it right here that, you know, we have our lawmakers have heard them. So I wonder if I missed something. Oh, I think I missed something. Okay, that's why. I was thinking about the Green New Deal. I did want to talk about the Green New Deal. And the Green New Deal is another example of work that has involved advocacy and our lawmakers. Right now you have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is pushing the Green New Deal, which is looking to create a committee that will evaluate renewable energy and our energy future, and get lawmakers together to create laws and goals for a future to get us off of fossil fuels in time. And that work, the New Deal, Green New Deal, has been based on a lot of work by previous lawmakers, and also folks who have done a lot of advocacy work over the year have helped give knowledge to our lawmakers so that they can do something like the Green New Deal. And you have Bernie Sanders, Jeff Merkley, various other senators, and there's a whole bunch of others that are supporting the Green New Deal. And the other interesting thing with the Green New Deal is that I think one of the requirements on the committee is anybody who is on the committee, what I think has been proposed is anybody who's on the committee should not be getting money from any of the lawmakers, shouldn't be getting money from the oil industry, because there's a thought that they can't be objective if they're actually getting money from the oil industries or the fossil fuel industries, because it is normal. They're not, the fossil fuel industries don't, we do have a market-based economy, and they're an industry, and they don't want to see their industry go. I mean, there are a lot of people whose jobs are on the line from this industry. Doing the transformation is hard. I mean, we see the coal miners, and they tell their stories, and the transformation is hard. I mean, I was born in Detroit. I have family in Detroit. I've seen what happens when industry is not healthy in a community. I don't know if anybody has been there, but Detroit was hit very, very hard. And much of the city collapsed. It was, very hard on that. I don't wish that on any community. And so the Green New Deal is looking at doing a just transition as well, so that any communities that are heavily reliant on working with having workers that work on fossil fuel or employed by fossil fuels are getting priority to be able to be retrained and move into the new 21st century clean technology economy. And also our poorer communities, and so that we can actually uplift our society as we move forward and have it be a resource, this transformation. Okay, so the other driver, of course, is technological innovation, entrepreneurial spirit, and that all leads to dropping prices. And it leads ultimately, when you have technological innovation, that leads to disruption. And we've seen energy transformations in the past. The last turn of the century, we had disruption. Folks were driving around in horse and buggies and on horses. In the early 1900s, by 1913, 1920, there were cars everywhere after you saw mass production. The transformation can happen really fast. We had airplanes in the air by World War I. And electricity also hit fast as well. So the reason that those technologies took hold is because they provided something for society. They were better product than riding around in a horse and buggy, even though horses are great also. but I mean, it was something that folks needed, or not needed, but enjoyed using, and it was valuable to them, and you saw that it happened fast. And now we're seeing here too these technological transformations happening in our time and happening quickly as well. So the reason that renewable energy technology will take hold, I believe that it is inevitable that it will happen. I don't know if it will happen fast enough to prevent climate change. That's the issue. That's why we need to continue pushing for it. But I do believe that it is inevitable that we will move to clean technologies because it is a cheaper, cleaner, safer product. When renewable technologies, clean technologies, are a technology that will continue to improve. They are not dependent on, once you install them, the fuel is free. Whereas fossil fuel products, their price is also determined by the price of fuel. And the price of fuel and the fuel that you have to dig up and bring and store and carry. Whereas solar and wind energy is a technology that you just can continue improving. And as you continue improving, the prices plummet and plummet. And as I showed earlier, solar PV plants and wind farms, electricity from those are now cheaper than natural gas. They're either equal to or cheaper, depending on the place, but they're really, in some places, cheaper, and they're dropping, and in many cases, cheaper. So if you think of our hydroelectric dams, that's a very good way to think of renewable energy, because our renewable energy is like our hydroelectric dams in that sense. Our hydroelectric dams were very expensive to build. Many of them were built in the 1930s, and but they brought in they brought a lot to the communities. In Tennessee, my co-author says he remembers shoveling coal into his boiler and that the air would be black, like in China, but in our cities here. And then the dams were built, and he remembers the air cleaning, and he didn't have to shovel coal into his, he wasn't shoveling coal into his boiler anymore, and life was good. And the other thing is it brought a lot of economic benefit and growth and industry because electricity from dams are so cheap. So the thing about renewable energy, and luckily renewable energy doesn't use as much water and doesn't have to deal with fish and that kind of thing as well, and manage and disrupt rivers. But it's the same kind of thing. Once the dam was built, the fuel was free, and electricity was cheap, and it was very beneficial for society on so many levels. So solar and wind energy is going to be the same way. Once we install it, it's going to be cheaper and better. So, and the other thing is the technology would continue to get better, continue to get cheaper. Electric vehicles are also will be less expensive than the internal combustion engine. You can fuel them for about $1 per gallon equivalent, and as the technology improves, which it's basically there now, once it's the same price as our fossil fuel powered cars, it will be cheaper to run them. Plus, they need less maintenance because you don't have the gas-powered engine that has many moving parts and pistons and different things that fail. You just have the battery and the electric motor, and it'll need less service as well. And then, of course, you have the drain on society, but will be relieved from spills and the cost of health, which is estimated about $1,800 per person, and then climate costs, which is about $8,000 per person in the year 2050 that we'll have to be paying. So in the end, it's a better product, and better products end up winning. And I think they will eventually, we'll see more of it, and it'll take hold. If we look at electric vehicles as an example of a better product, it is estimated by the year 2022-ish that the internal combustion engine car will be about the same price as the electric vehicle car. And that's when there's expected to be takeoff. And we're already seeing it. There may be a number of Tesla Model 3s running around. I don't know how, I know on the West Coast, they're everywhere. But I'm not sure how many you guys have here and how many you guys are seeing, but I'm seeing them everywhere. Electric vehicles are popping up more and more. As we have more models, there will be more variety for us. Right now, there aren't a lot of models, so they don't provide everything that all of us need or would want. But as more come on, they'll take hold because they're cheaper once they're the same price, because they're cheaper to run, because they're fun, they'll start taking hold. And I think you'll see the disruption happen, that we will see fewer people just will stop wanting to buy the internal combustion engines. In China, this last year, 1 million were sold. And in the US, we have 1 million on the road today. Nissan, various German manufacturers, GM and Ford have all, CEOs and executives have all talked about an electric future. So it is coming. And it'll be like so many other technologies. In the blink of an eye, all of a sudden, there'll be tons of them. Here's an example of exponential growth of electric vehicles. I'm using electric vehicles as an example of the exponential growth that we're seeing in these clean technologies. And what you can see is it took 6 years for the first 1 million electric vehicles to get on the road. So that's between 2011 and 2016, or is that 5 years? 60 months. Sorry, 5 years. It took about 5 years. And then for the next 1 million vehicles to come on the road, it took about 17 months. Then for the next 1 million, it took 10 months. This is worldwide. Then between 2017 and 2018, it took 6 months to get 1 million on the road. And again, 2018, 2019, it took about 6 months. So that's where you see exponential growth. And it's been hard for us in general as humans to predict exponential growth. I think we're linear. In general, we're linear thinking creatures, so we're linear thinkers. But what happens is as these technologies take hold, they just take over. And in a blink of an eye, we're surprised by it. And we've seen disruptive forces already. And a few examples are, well, Uber is pushing on taxis. They're really convenient and easy. It's easy to use Uber everywhere. New York is a place where you have pretty great taxi service. You have a lot of taxis. But in other places, you don't necessarily have that taxi service. In San Diego, I met my co-author, actually in San Diego, and we went to a movie after we worked on our book, and it was late at night, and we had called a cab, and the taxi didn't come, just didn't come. And we're just sitting there, you know, and it got empty on the street. The people in the building left, you know. We were just sitting there. And finally, I think finally the taxi came. And I've had experiences where I went to Rice University to give a talk. And on the way back, I had called a taxi there. And the taxi didn't come in my flight. I had to get to my flight. And that was the first time I used I don't know if I used Lyft or Uber, one of them. And it was the first time I downloaded the application. I pressed the button. I called them. I could see the car, where it was, you know, where the Lyft or Uber driver was. It was over, you know, there. And you could see it driving to you. You could say how much time it would take to get to you. I'm like, all right, it'll get to me in 4 minutes. That'll get me to my flight on time. It's all good. And I used it. And then the next time I used them, I used Lyft in Los Angeles. And I went up to the taxi driver in LA, and you know, I said, okay, and I'm thinking, I want to use the taxi. I want to use these guys. You know, I don't have to go to Uber. And I go to him and I say, I want to go to this hotel, and it was just very close. And it was a very short ride where I was going, and I could hear him thinking. And he goes, oh, well, I'm going to have to take you on this really long route to get you to the marina because, you know, of traffic. And I thought, oh no, that's wrong. And then I went inside, I called the Lyft, or I called one of these guys, you know. And then the other time, oh, and I didn't use it at my house. At my house, I called a taxi, and the taxi didn't come, okay, at all. And then I ended up I just drove my car to the airport, and then my husband got to the airport and took the car home or something. So taxi service isn't, but these guys are coming in and they're taking over because they're providing a service where it's not always functioning as well. So we've seen it in other places. I went on about taxis, but we've seen it with our digital cameras. I got a film-based camera for my graduation gift for graduate school, and within 2 years I couldn't find a place to develop my film. You know, I didn't see that one coming. And Kodak didn't see it coming either because they actually had the technology for digital cameras. And they decided, nah, it's never going to happen. They didn't see the exponential growth of it. They thought, no, you know, it's film, it's all film. And, you know, they suffered for it. Our smartphones have replaced all other phones. I mean, our analog phones, rotary phones, you know, are a thing of the past. There are no more blockbusters. We download our films. Solar City wants to take the utility over, or wants to do some of the utilities work and produce some electricity. So we aren't always good at predicting exponential growth. And clean technologies are showing exponential growth potential right now. And there's a good chance that they will happen faster than we can imagine. If we are lucky, if we're really lucky, they will happen really fast, like happened with Blockbuster and Netflix, and like happened with digital cameras. And maybe, you know, we'll be able to solve this climate change problem faster than we could imagine, if we're really lucky. Meanwhile, we have to continue to work on it. Our entrepreneurs need to work, our activists need to work, our educators, our lawmakers, everybody has to keep working on it, to keep it going, because we have to keep buying these products, because as we buy them, as we invest in them, more money will come to them, more investment will come to them, and they'll continue to grow faster, because we need to have it happen fast. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about is the consumer. We as consumers are essential. We're really important for this as well, because we buy many of these products. We buy products, and we can help this transformation happen. One of the best ways to do it is in our home, and to think of the all-electric home. As I talked about, we use a lot of natural gas in our homes, and primarily from heating and cooking. And if we just move from natural gas to electric heating and electric cooking, we can have a very big impact. The electric utilities are moving to renewable energy, and some, as Excel, have even committed to 100% clean energy by 2050. So I believe that it's happening there. Natural gas is kind of a problem there, or is as well, but it is happening there. But our homes, we produce a lot of greenhouse gases from the heating of our homes and our buildings. So as we think, and I've talked about the electric home before, if we move to heat pumps, there's also district heating, which some cities have done where they've used waste heat from other processes and used pipes and brought those into homes as well. And there are some cities and countries around the world that do use that. So that can be used as well. Probably in individual homes, a good way, as we have a natural gas heater, when our furnace dies, then you just switch it with a heat pump. And the other thing to think about is not to be overly stressed as a consumer and say, I've got to do all of this at once, because it will be hard to finance it. I mean, finding the financing, figuring it out is not always the easiest. You don't even have contractors that know how to do everything. You have to find the right contractor and look at it, and not to stress ourselves to do everything. I'm doing it slowly, slowly. Our natural gas oven died, and my husband had been wanting an induction oven, and I was kind of skeptical for a long time. For like 20 years, I was like, I don't really want an induction. And he's a techie, he's a computer software engineer. And he was like, yeah, I want this induction oven, it's gonna be so cool. And I was always, 20 years ago, I was like, no, I don't know, I'm not sure. And as I started to research this and learn more about it, then I was like, okay, you want that, how about we get that induction oven you wanted, or induction cooker? Because he had been wanting it for so long, and now that I really, really wanted a new oven, because it wasn't working well, and he was kind of bringing contractors, and we were fixing it, and repair guys, and I was getting sick of being there waiting for the repair guy to fix this burner and fix that burner. And that's where I was like, yeah, let's do that. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And then I got a new one. Anyway, the point is, as something breaks, change it with something cleaner, and more efficient is the idea. So the other question is as a consumer moving to an all-electric home, getting heat pumps, which is really important because of the natural gas and induction ovens, is a little bit harder sell than an electric vehicle. I mean, I'm really telling you, if you get an electric vehicle, especially if you love cars, they're so awesome. I mean, they drive really, I grew up in Chicago area, so I love, I was never a real hot rodder, but if I get on the highway, I definitely don't want to be blocked, and I want to drive and have some fun. So I really love the electric car and being able to be able to zoom through traffic, and it's really great. And if you love cars, you're going to love the electric car. Heat pump's a little harder to be like, oh yeah, look at my heat pump. This is so awesome. I mean, solar panels, people put solar panels up and they can brag about it. They talk to their buddy, and then it's kind of cool. You get a solar panel, and then your neighbor sees it, and then they're like, oh, where'd you get that? And your contractor, how'd you do it? And then it kind of, it can, those can take off. It's harder to do the heat pump. Now, I guess what could be sexy is the all-electric home. Elon Musk, I bring him up because he's pushing, he's been working on the concept of doing like solar tiles for the roof. Yeah, and he's doing electric vehicles and then energy storage. So he's helping create your own little electric microgrid. And I think that if you think of the all-electric home, it's an easier sell than the heat pump. Woohoo! They're kind of not as, they're really great, but it's not like an electric vehicle. So what I want to say, as the final things I want to talk about, is how much impact we can have as a consumer. And I want to bring a few examples of where we've made a difference. One was in California. Everybody put solar panels on the roof, and it had a huge, huge impact because it made the utilities and the lawmakers listen in California. I'm going to bring up something really boring, which is this duck curve. This duck curve is the curve that shows the load of electricity that the utilities experience once everybody puts solar panels on the roof. And this gave them a lot of sleepless nights. And every conference I go to, you know, some utility guy or commissioner or whoever, the regulators of the utilities, they throw this curve up. Look at this duck curve. This is what we've got to deal with. But what's happened is now the regulators and lawmakers have had to think about how to deal with the solar panels on the roof. The consumer said, we want solar panels. We want renewable electricity. You know, they didn't even have to go to their lawmaker, well, except for they got net metering, which helped them put it on their roof where they were able to sell their electricity back. So that's not totally true. But they did, as a consumer, they made a statement and they put it on. So what happened is, and I'll just walk you through it because it's kind of fun to think about. What happened is the sun came out, and this is how much demand for electricity there was. And all of a sudden, everybody went to work, and the demand for electricity went down for two reasons. One, from the central generators, from the gas plants and the electricity plants and the nuclear plants that they had. There wasn't a lot of demand because everybody had solar panels on the roof. So the sun came out, and all of a sudden the demand went down, like way down. And then they had to start turning all of their generation off. And they're like, oh no, and then they weren't making money, right? Oh shoot, we have to, how do you just turn a nuclear plant off? Or how do you, and electricity is used the minute it's generated, you don't store it. And with the central generation, it was very predictable how the electricity would go to the home. They would know at this time there was the electricity and they turned the plants on and off. All of a sudden they were having to turn all their plants off. And that's bad because plants don't go on and off that easily. It takes time to ramp them back up, and I think it takes money too. Anyway, all of a sudden the sun would go down, people would come home, and then bam, the demand would go way up. Now the solar panels weren't producing electricity. Everybody came home and turned their lights on because the sun went down, and all of a sudden they were scrambling to turn all of their generators back on. And they went, oh my God, how are we going to do this? Our generators don't go on that fast. This is crazy. Okay, so they started passing laws for energy storage units because storage actually reacts quicker than natural gas generating plants or coal plants or nuclear plants. They're using natural gas plants for this quick response, but it does not respond as quickly as energy storage. Energy storage is really good, especially battery storage, but there's other types of storage technology too for handling the renewable energy and the variable energy. Okay. The other place that this happened was with electric vehicles. In 2016, 400,000 people put $1,000 on Tesla Model 3. They put $1,000 down on 400,000 Tesla Model 3s. And so there were 400,000 Tesla Model 3 pre-orders. And before that, like there still are, but there were many articles about how Tesla was going to fail, how it's going nowhere. German auto companies were laughing at Tesla. Nobody was taking electrification of the auto industry that seriously. I mean, nobody in the auto industry. All of a sudden, 400,000 people put $1,000 down, sight unseen for 400,000 cars. And the auto industry went, oh my gosh, there's a market for this. Wow, people really want this product. And within a year, then there were all of these, designs for cars coming out from GM and Ford, and then the Bolt from GM was in the works, and they were pushing that, and the European companies started to push harder, and now everybody's thinking about electric future. But I remember when that happened, and I remember, reading, and nobody really thought it was going to happen. I remember talking to folks, oh, I don't know, and it literally, what the consumers took action. And they told the auto industry, we want electric cars. And now we're seeing more and more electric cars come out. So it's very powerful. So the future is in our drive to innovate. We need a can-do attitude. Things in our society, in our world, have happened from a can-do attitude. George Washington had a can-do attitude, and we have a nation, right? Susan B. Anthony worked for the suffrage movement, and Martin Luther King worked for civil rights. Gandhi worked to free his nation and form independent India. And then you also have your inventors like Thomas Edison and Tesla and Steve Jobs or Elon Musk. You have entrepreneurs, you have activists, You have teachers, you have engineers, you have folks who organize our conferences, you have everybody working together with a can-do attitude to make it happen. And it feels like we're working hard and it's not happening sometimes, or it's so slow. But with this collective action, we can have a can-do attitude and we can make things happen. People have made things happen. They have. And the climate crisis is a huge challenge. There are a lot of factors pulling us back. There's a lot of inertia, and there's forces trying to stop it. But we can continue to push forward. We have done it in the past. We are resilient. We fought fascism in World War II. We've gone to the moon, and we can do this also. And we can do it together. It's not going to just be one person, I believe. I believe it's a collective effort on our part, and it takes everybody. You can see the consumer, we can do something. You know, we can all do something. And so I just encourage all of us to not lose hope every time we see negative press, but to think we can do it, because it's that attitude that's going to get us, push us into the 21st century and push us to have a cleaner, safer, and better 21st century.